Today, I want to talk about right-sizing your organization or your company. It's this fragile, very difficult line that you have to walk between becoming too big and really stopping or preventing your growth. And in times where you have very little control over how things can happen to you, it's so important to stay on top of right-sizing your organization, right-sizing your company and your staff and your production and your work to make sure that it makes sense today. Welcome to the Leadership We Need Now, a space where we talk about kind, caring, and compassionate leadership. I'm Stacey Dye, and I've been a nonprofit director, an executive coach, and a strategist for over 20 years. So I appreciate all of you showing up, making sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and liking our page, liking and commenting on the work that we're doing, and supporting us as we move forward. When we're talking about right-sizing, what I mean by that is sometimes when we build something, we create something, or we start something, we have really big ideas. Or maybe we have a smaller idea and it becomes bigger than we can manage. It becomes this monster that we create. Or maybe we have these really big ideas of how successful something will be, or how many people will participate, or how well it will do, and really it falls short. And so for us, it's about looking at things as leaders and stepping back and being able to right-size the situation, right-size your organization, your staff, your production, your programs to fit what is happening in real time. And by that, I mean, there's so many opportunities that people have had for growth, for expansion, whether that's new funding, new resources, new product expansion, new program expansion. Maybe you had funders that were interested or donors that were interested, or maybe a product sold really well at a certain period of time. But making sure that you stay on task and adaptable to the changes that are happening to you from the outside, right? Like whether that's tariffs, whether that's funding cuts, whether that's an increase in resources or a decrease in resources, or whether that's something internal, a life change, just situational opportunities for other staff or for you. And maybe looking at things, whether that's on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis, to really understand if you're in the right space, if you're in the right time for where you are with the work. And so starting with things like expansion opportunities. Let's start with the good first. I think there's always going to be opportunities, especially in the nonprofit world, where you're going to be able to maybe write a grant, or you have donors that are interested in a specific project. Or if you have staff that's interested in the project and they love the work, or maybe you have such a high need for something. But adapting to the outside constantly will leave you in an unstable position if you are not prepared and ready and stable enough to adapt to that. So what I mean by that is if you write a federal grant and you get a few $100,000 and you're hiring new people and you're doing all these new programs, and there's all these things that change within your organization. You've added a lot of administrative costs, which is necessary to do the work. When that funding goes away, because what we see is very temporary, very short-term funding, it is difficult to replace. And if you do replace it, funders typically want new ideas, new creations, new programs. And so all of those things, even if it was the most successful program, will have to be filtered or changed or altered to fit whatever can be paid for moving forward. And so as you look at these things, even if it seems like the best of opportunities, how do we sustain this? How do we sustain this idea? How do we sustain this new type of organization if we adapt to this bigger growth? It is also this emotional piece of when you when you are doing this work, if there is an opportunity to bring things to people in your community, if it's an opportunity to bring things to people in need and to help and to support your community and the people around you, you want to take those opportunities. So balancing the fact that you have the capacity to do that, you have the desire, you have the need, and then thinking about it as a long-term proposal, not just in terms of what you're going to do with the 1 or 2 years of funding you get. How will that look in 2 years? How will that look for your staff? How will that look for your organization structure? And what we're seeing now, especially in West Virginia, is a lot of organizations that received quite a bit of money. Funding changed. Funding, the way funding is done, the way that the government looks at community building has changed. And so all of these things, these really amazing opportunities that came to our communities have been eliminated or changed or altered to where what was built on a successful model no longer is sustainable because the money isn't there. And so how do we, especially when we've encouraged them, supported them, cheer them on to do these big things, support organizations as they transition and change and have to right size their organization, not just around the programming, but the staffing and the administrative costs and all those things have to change. And when you do that, you really change the DNA of that organization. And that is so stressful on a leader. That is so stressful on the employees and the staff to right size, because even at the core of it, you are still worried about what this does to your community, what this will do to the legacy of the work that you've done, what this also does to you as a human being, where you're afraid you're going to lose your job or you're going to have to make some really big changes. You might love the work you're doing. You might really feel passionate about it. You might really have felt like the work that you're doing was so impactful. And to have to change that is really hard. And, for organizations who built a lot of capacity and expanded and grew really large, downsizing or right scaling to what is happening today is really hard, because you feel those personal things of disappointment and letting people down and not having any control. And you have no control. These leaders have no control of what's happened. They have done good work. They've shown up. They've done everything right. And it still didn't matter. And that's the hardest part about this, is accepting what isn't fair, what isn't right, what shouldn't even be, right? Like why are we at a place where we have to constantly take away from our communities and take away from the good things, just because we cannot figure out how to support and help each other? And so downsizing, right sizing when you've been large, is really difficult. And I think even in this time, if something's changed, but there's an opportunity, and the opportunity is a large opportunity, a couple $100,000 or a new program or a new project, even considering now, thinking about that, even though you're like, well, you might as well get the money while you can, you're kicking the can. You're just setting things up. Unless you prepare yourself, unless you think about things in a different way, and unless you think of a sustainability model, unless you kind of work with what you have, maybe add a few things here and there, but you don't add a ton of staff, you don't add a ton of things that can't be sustained, or programs or things that have a lot of administrative cost. Those things are probably not going to be things for this time. I mean, this is not a time where anyone is thriving. None of the good guys are thriving. Let's say that. None of the good guys are thriving in this moment. And if you're trying to survive this, if you're trying to make sure that you have the resources and the support that you need to keep what you're doing and the work that you're doing moving forward for years, you have to change the way you're thinking. And you have to look at this not as a, how do we get all this money and collect it, but how do we utilize the money to make sure that we're thinking about not having it in a year, not that there'll be a replacement for that money next year, or that that's a continuation. That is definitely not a healthy framework. So I'm saying all these things with the thought that this is not how it should be. This is actually the worst way to do business, because you are consistently and constantly living in the future, 6, 12 months ahead, and you might get a grant and then immediately you're thinking about how to replace it or how to do it instead of resting easy in the work, building on your capacity, building on your skill set. You're constantly trying to move a different needle, and it is not a sustainable system for anyone, especially if you're an employee in the system or if you receive the services of the system, where you cannot depend on whether or not that bus service is going to be there, or that homeless shelter is going to be open, or food is going to be provided, or whatever it is. If you are consistently concerned about the stability of what you're doing, no one can thrive in that. I mean, it's, our basic human needs have to be met. And I think as we're doing this and we're thinking about right sizing, we have to do it with a mentality of, this is how I adapt, this is how I adjust, this is how in this best moment I can make the best decision I can. I might be 51% sure of it, but I got to move forward. I got to move something to make sure that what stays and what should stay can live. And so right sizing feels, when you're building, it probably feels great. When you're not building, when you're having to shrink your staff, when you're having to limit your programs, when you sometimes have to close the doors, when you sometimes have to see if another organization can pick up services or pick up resources or pick up staff. Those things do not feel good, and they are so overwhelming for a leader to handle. And so as you're thinking about this, just know that in your mind, this has to be how we do it now, not how it has to happen in long-term future. So for you, right sizing is looking at what has to live, trying to make sure that we save what can be saved, what we can think about and plan for in the future, we do, knowing that that can change in 1 minute. That can be an immediate change of a funding cut or funding opportunity, or donor goes away or a donor comes in, or whatever it is. But being adaptable, being responsive to things as they happen is a huge skill that a lot of nonprofits have in leadership, but it is exhausting and it is not sustainable. And so as you're doing this, just making sure that you're checking your temperature of your organization, that you do the right things as quickly as you can, even if that means having to let staff go or change staff hours or adapt to things like that. But you can't fix it if you don't face it. And if you are going to survive this, we're not in thriving mode at all. But if you're going to survive this as a leader, as an organization, as programs, as services, we have to be smarter, think ahead, be nimble, be creative, and move forward together as we think about how to build whatever is coming next. And so I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm there with you. I wish I could say something better, clearer. I wish I could give you all the answers and that it was just as simple as, buying an app or doing a skill every day or changing, your meditation time. But this is stuff that none of us know how to do, that none of us have been here before. None of us have experienced something like this before. Even someone like myself with 20 plus years of experience is every day going, whew, here we go. This isn't what I thought this would be, or this isn't right, or this isn't how it should be. But it is what it is. And so you have to kind of adapt. And so I'm thinking about you and sending you positive vibes, and let's just keep on doing the work together. But we need kind, caring, compassionate, courageous leadership and leaders like you. Thank you.